The woman's voice was sharp, echoing through the store and making a scene as she jabbed her finger toward the teenage girl. I'm telling you, she doesn't belong here, she hissed at the manager. The other customers froze, their eyes darting between the woman and the girl, unsure of what to do, but the girl didn't flinch. She stood tall, her eyes locked on the woman who had just humiliated her in front of everyone. Little did that woman know that truth she was about to discover would shatter her smug confidence in an instant. Emma Reynolds, a confident year-old with a love for fashion and a strong sense of self, had no idea what awaited her that afternoon. She had simply walked into a boutique to find a dress for a special event, completely unaware of the storm brewing around her. End of her father, Nathan Reynolds, was a well-respected entrepreneur who owned several high-end stores across the city. Known for his generosity and vision, Nathan had built his empire from the ground up, but today he was away on business, leaving Emma to enjoy a quiet shopping experience. Or so she thought. Emma Reynolds had walked into the boutique for the very first time without her father. It was a proud moment for her, a chance to shop for herself and feel independent. She had always admired the elegant racks of designer clothing in the shop, and finally she gets to shop them. But today it felt different. Today she was just another customer, or so she thought. As Emma browsed the elegant racks, she felt a sense of pride and excitement. The upcoming charity gala was important, and she wanted to look her best. She spotted a stunning dress and couldn't wait to try it on. Then she noticed it wasn't her size and dropped it. But while she admired the dress' intricate details, someone else in the store wasn't admiring Emma at all. Then someone was Mrs. Evelyn Drake, a regular customer and a woman who carried herself with an air of entitlement. When Evelyn noticed Emma, her eyes narrowed and her expression soured. To Evelyn, Emma didn't belong in the boutique, and she was determined to make that clear. Evelyn's judgment didn't stop at quiet disdain. She followed Emma through the store, her sharp gaze tracking her every move. When Emma stepped into the fitting room with the dress, Evelyn muttered under her breath, loud enough for other customers to hear, "I bet she's not even here to buy anything." Emma, unaware of Evelyn's growing hostility, continued shopping, enjoying the moment, but Evelyn wasn't about to let things slide. In her mind, Emma was an intruder, someone who didn't deserve to share the same space as her, and Evelyn was about to take matters into her own hands. What would you do if someone judged you for simply existing in a space you had every right to be in? Click the subscribe button if you believe one should never be judged wrongly because of how they look. Only those who judge others because of how they look won't subscribe to the channel. As Emma browsed through the dresses, again she found another one that caught her eye, perfect for the charity gala her father was hosting. She picked it up with a smile, heading toward the fitting room to try it on. Little did she know this moment of joy was about to be overshadowed by someone else's prejudice. Across the room, Evelyn Drake watched Emma intently. To Evelyn, Emma didn't belong there, she muttered under her breath, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. What's she doing here? There really letting anyone in these days? Her sharp gaze followed Emma's every move, suspicious, clouding her judgment. At this point, to her surprise, Emma almost succeeded. Emma stepped out of the fitting room, the dress fitting her perfectly. She admired herself in the mirror, her excitement growing as she imagined wearing it at the gala. But her peaceful moment was interrupted. Evelyn, with a forced smile, approached her. "That's a beautiful dress," Evelyn said, her tone dripping with condescension. Emma, polite as ever, replied, "Thank you, I think it's perfect for my dad's event." But Evelyn wasn't there to compliment her. "Are you sure you're in the right store?" Evelyn asked, her fake smile disappearing. Emma frowned, confused by the question. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she replied. She turned and walked out, her face steady. "I'm going back to college," she replied. Evelyn scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "This store isn't exactly budget-friendly," she said. "Maybe you should try somewhere more affordable." Emma felt her stomach tighten. She had encountered rudeness before, but this felt different, more targeted, more cruel. Still she refused to back down. I'll let my purchases speak for themselves, she said firmly, refusing to be intimidated. Other customers began to notice the exchange, their whispers filling the boutique. Emma, trying to keep her composure, looked around and noticed the store manager watching from a distance. She took a deep breath and said, "If you have an issue, maybe you should take it up with someone in charge." Evelyn smirked. "Oh, don't worry, I will," she said, turning toward the manager, and that's when things escalated. Evelyn wasn't satisfied. She flagged down the store manager, a woman who had only worked there for a few months and didn't recognize Emma. "Excuse me," Evelyn said, her voice loud and sharp. "I've been watching that girl, and I'm pretty sure she slipped something into her bag." The manager, visibly uncomfortable, approached cautiously. "What seems to be the issue, Mrs. Drake?" she asked. "The issue," Evelyn snapped, pointing at Emma, "is that she's been acting suspiciously. She's obviously not here to buy anything. You need to check her bag." Emma's heart sank as the accusation hit her. The manager glanced at Emma, then at Evelyn, unsure of how to proceed. "I haven't done anything wrong," Emma said calmly, her voice steady despite the growing tension. But Evelyn wasn't interested in her denial. "Of course you'd say that," she snapped. "Why don't you just show us what's in your bag?" Emma, stunned by the accusation, looked at the manager and said calmly, "I haven't done anything wrong, but if it'll stop this nonsense, go ahead." She handed her bag over without hesitation, her heart pounding with humiliation as the small crowd of customers looked on. But the manager opened Emma's bag carefully, checking its contents. After a moment, she looked up and shook her head. "There's nothing here," she said quietly, her tone apologetic. But Evelyn refused to let it go. "Check again," she demanded. "She must have hidden it somewhere else." Emma's patience was wearing thin. She took a step forward, her voice calm but firm. "I think we're done here," she said, taking her bag back. "Unless you have actual proof, I suggest you stop harassing me." But Evelyn wasn't done. "If you have nothing to hide," Evelyn said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "then why are you being so defensive?" Emma took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she clenched them at her sides. "Defensive," she repeated. "You accused me of stealing without a shred of evidence. That's not defensiveness, that's self-respect." The manager, desperate to diffuse the situation, said, "Perhaps we should all just take a step back and calm down." But Evelyn wasn't calming down. She pointed a finger at Emma and said, "Girls like her don't belong in stores like this. They come and make a scene and leave with things that don't belong to them." Emma's jaw tightened, her resolve hardening with every word Evelyn spoke. "You're not just wrong," she said, her voice cutting through the crowd. "You're showing everyone exactly who you are, and it's not a good look. We don't need troublemakers like her ruining this place," Evelyn said loudly, turning to the manager. "Just ask her to leave." The manager hesitated, aided, glancing between Evelyn and Emma, unsure of how to handle the situation. "I think it's best if you leave," the manager said softly, her words directed at Emma. "We don't want any more disruptions." Emma's jaw tightened as the manager's words sank, and she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're asking me to leave," she said slowly, her voice filled with disbelief, "even though I've done nothing wrong?" Evelyn smirked, folding her arms. "Exactly, you're just proving my point." Emma turned to Evelyn, her gaze unwavering. "You're only doing this because of the color of my skin," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You should be ashamed of yourself." After a pause, Evelyn responded quickly. Evelyn, caught off guard, said, "I'm just protecting the store's reputation." But the damage was done. The other customers began whispering, their eyes filled with judgment, not for Emma, but for Evelyn. "Have you clicked on the subscribe button yet? Subscribe now to show your support of justice for Emma in this story." Emma, refusing to let Evelyn or the manager intimidate her, pulled out her phone. She dialed quickly, raising the phone to her ear. "Dad," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I need you to come to the boutique. There's a situation here. Some things are missing." Evelyn rolled her eyes. But what Evelyn didn't know was that Emma's call would bring the truth crashing down in a way no one could have predicted. "How petulant of you. The truth will reveal the stunning twist that left everyone speechless. And if you believe in standing up for justice, hit that subscribe button now. Let's make sure stories like Emma's and inspire real change. The room fell into an uneasy silence as she ended the call, slipping the phone back into her pocket. Evelyn Drake, ever confident in her own assumptions, scoffed loudly, turning to another customer nearby, probably calling her boyfriend to come bail her out. She whispered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The customer looked away, clearly uncomfortable with Evelyn's behavior, but Evelyn, and both beamed by her audience, continued, "This is why stores like this need stricter policies. We can't just let anyone walk in." Emma didn't react. She stood her ground, her head held high as the store manager fidgeted nervously. Nearby, the growing tension in the room was palpable, with every pair of eyes on Emma, waiting to see what would happen next. Then the unmistakable roar of an engine interrupted the scene. Outside, a sleek black SUV rolled to a halt at the curb. Its tinted windows gleamed under the afternoon sun, exuding an air of power and authority. A towering figure stepped out, first a bodyguard with a sharp suit and an earpiece, his gaze scanning the boutique like a hawk assessing its surroundings. The tension in the room shifted immediately. Moments later, another figure emerged from the vehicle. Andrew Reynolds, his tailored suit hugged his tall, broad frame, and his polished shoes clicked with purpose against the pavement, with a presence that could command a boardroom or silence a crowd. He walked toward the boutique with calm, deliberate strides, his face unreadable but undeniably focused. The glass doors swung open with a soft chime, and the bodyguard entered. First, his imposing frame and no-nonsense expression making heads turn. Evelyn's whispering stopped mid-sentence as Andrew Reynolds followed his presence. Impossible to ignore. The staff recognized him instantly, their faces lighting up with a mix of relief and respect. Whispers rippled through the boutique. "It's Mr. Reynolds." The manager, visibly flustered, hurried over, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, her tone both reverent and nervous. "We weren't expecting you today." Evelyn's face twisted in confusion as she watched the scene unfold. "Oh, another parent is here. That's better," she muttered to herself, but before she could say anything, Nathan Reynolds strode past the manager and straight to Emma, his expression calm but serious. He didn't need to raise his voice to make an impact. The sheer force of his confidence and authority filled the room. His sharp eyes scanned the boutique, taking in the hushed crowd, the flustered manager, and finally his daughter standing at the center of it all. Andrew paused at the entrance, surveying the scene with a calm but serious expression. His sharp eyes took in the scattered customers, the fidgeting manager, and most importantly, his daughter standing at the center of it all. Without hesitation, he strode toward Emma, his footsteps measured but purposeful. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with authority. Evelyn's expression faltered for just a moment. She quickly recovered, though, assuming Andrew was just another CEO that would support her because of how much she spends in the shop. "Oh, good," she said, stepping forward. "I'm glad someone's here to deal with this mess. This girl has been causing trouble, and I caught her acting suspiciously. She even tried to steal something." Andrew's expression didn't change as he listened to Evelyn's accusations. He turned to the manager, raising an eyebrow. "Is this true?" he asked calmly. The manager hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Well," she began, her voice shaky, "Mrs. Drake did bring some concerns to my attention, but we checked Emma's bag and there was nothing in it." "Exactly," Evelyn snapped, cutting her off. "But that doesn't mean she wasn't planning to take something. People like her are good at hiding things." The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting, as the room fell into a stunned silence. Customers exchanged uneasy glances, and the manager looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Andrew's gaze shifted back to Evelyn, his calm demeanor unchanged. "People like her," he repeated, his tone neutral but pointed. Evelyn faltered slightly, realizing she had perhaps said too much. "You know what I mean," she stammered. "This store is for respectable clients," and she Clearly doesn't fit the profile. She pointed at Emma, her fingers shaking slightly as if her accusations would somehow solidify her position. Customers exchanged glances, their unease growing. With every word Evelyn spoke, Nathan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stood silently, his gaze shifting between Evelyn and Emma, his face unreadable. The weight of his silence was palpable, making Evelyn falter slightly, but she pressed on. I mean, someone needs to take responsibility, she added, her voice rising as if to convince herself as much as the crowd. And then with calm authority, Nathan finally spoke. This girl you're accusing, he said, his tone measured but sharp, is my daughter. The room froze. It was as if time itself had stopped. The customers, the staff, even Evelyn herself, all stood in stunned silence as the weight of Nathan's words sank in. Gasps rippled through the boutique and whispers began to spread like wildfire. Evelyn's expression crumbled in an instant, replaced by a look of pure shock and fear. Her mouth opened and closed as if she were trying to speak, but no words came out. Her usual confidence had vanished, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Emma, standing tall beside her father, didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The truth had been spoken, and the power dynamics in the room had shifted entirely. Emma sighed, no longer able to find words, and held out her hands. Nathan stepped closer to Evelyn, his commanding presence towering over her. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of every unspoken accusation. You judged her without cause, he began, his words deliberate and cutting. You harassed her, made false accusations, and humiliated her in front of everyone here, all because of your own prejudice. Forget that nothing touched you. Patient Mrs. Markham, Nathan said. Andrew took a slow, deliberate step closer to Evelyn, his presence towering over her. You're absolutely right, he said, his voice cold. This store is for respectable clients, and you're not one of them. Evelyn blinked, taken aback. Excuse me, she said, her voice rising. Andrew turned slightly, gesturing toward Emma. The weight of his words hit the room like a thunderclap. Gasps echoed through the boutique as customers and staff alike processed the revelation. Evelyn's face turned pale, her confidence crumbling in an instant. Your daughter, she repeated weakly. Andrew nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. That's right, he said, and not only is she my daughter, but she has every right to be here more than you. In fact, Evelyn's face turned a deep shade of red as she stammered, I didn't. No, she didn't say who she was. Nathan's eyes narrowed, his tone unwavering. She shouldn't have to, he said. Everyone who walks into this store deserves respect, whether they're my daughter or not. Turning his attention to the store manager, Nathan continued, his voice sharp. And you stood by and let this happen. Why didn't you stand up for her? Why didn't you question these baseless accusations? The manager, clearly shaken, hung her head. I didn't know, she murmured, her voice barely audible. Bah, Argus said, stroking her shoulder comfortingly. Not knowing isn't an excuse, Nathan said firmly. It's your responsibility to treat every customer with fair and dignity. What happened here today is unacceptable, and it reflects poorly on this entire establishment. Desperate to recover, Evelyn tried to defend herself. I was just trying to protect the store's reputation, she stammered. I didn't mean any harm. Nathan's expression didn't soften. Protect the store's reputation, he repeated, his voice cold. By targeting an innocent girl, by making baseless accusations and embarrassing yourself in the process. Evelyn looked around the room, hoping for support, but found none. The other customers avoided her gaze, their disapproval clear in their expressions. Even the store staff seemed unwilling to come to her defense. I thought Evelyn began, but her voice trailed off as Nathan took another step forward, his tone growing sharper. You thought wrong, he said, and now you're going to face the consequences of your actions. The back erupted into murmurs as customers whispered among themselves. Some nodded in agreement with Nathan's words, while others simply watched in stunned silence. The store manager looked visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she fumbled with a clipboard. Evelyn, on the other hand, seemed frozen in place, her usual arrogance replaced by a mix of humiliation, and fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but Nathan raised a hand, silencing her. "I think we've heard enough from you," he said firmly. "It's time for you to leave the room." Watched as Nathan turned to the bodyguard standing near the entrance. "Make sure she leaves," he instructed, his voice calm but final. The bodyguard nodded, stepping forward with a stern expression. Evelyn, realizing there was no way to salvage the situation, took a step back. I didn't mean any harm," she said weakly. Andrew's gaze didn't waver. "You're banned from this store and every other boutique I own," he said. "You're no longer welcome here." Evelyn's face turned red as the gravity of his words sank in. She glanced around the room, hoping for sympathy, but found none. Realizing there was no way out, muttered something under her breath and turned toward the door. Her heels clicked loudly against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the now silent boutique. As she reached the exit, she glanced back one last time, only to see Nathan standing tall beside Emma, his protective presence unshakable. With a huff, Evelyn pushed open the door and disappeared into the street, her once dominant presence reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale. The other customers watched in stunned silence, some nodding in agreement with Andrew's words. The manager, clearly embarrassed, stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds," she began, her voice apologetic, "I had no idea she was your daughter. If I had known." Andrew raised a hand, stopping her. "It's not about who she is," he said. "It's about how you handled the situation. You listened to accusations without evidence and didn't stand up for her when she needed you." Mitter replied, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again." Andrew nodded, but didn't let her off the hook entirely. "It better not," he said. "This store represents my name, and I won't tolerate this kind of behavior again." Have you ever faced racism or prejudice while shopping? Subscribe to the channel, then share your experience in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Nathan turned to Emma, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Emma nodded, a small smile breaking through her composed exterior. "I'm fine, Dad, thank you. I'm proud of you," Nathan said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You handled yourself with dignity and grace. This is your store as much as it is mine, and no one has the right to make you feel otherwise." Emma's smile widened, her confidence shining through. Together they walked toward the boutique's back office, leaving behind a room full of stunned onlookers and a lesson that no one would soon forget. But as they left the store together, Emma couldn't help but wonder how many more people like Evelyn were out there ready to judge without reason. She made a silent promise to herself this wouldn't be the last time she stood up for what was right. Emma's strength and Nathan's unwavering support show us that dignity cannot be stripped away by the ignorance of others. This isn't just a tale of confrontation, it's a story of triumph, a story that reminds us of the importance of empathy, fairness, and standing up for what's right no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Evelyn's actions, rooted in her own biases, serve as a cautionary tale about the harm that prejudice can cause not only to those it targets, but to the fabric of a community. And yet, Emma's grace under pressure and Nathan's decisive actions teach us that even in the darkest moments, there's room for change and redemption. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear how stories like Emma's resonate with you. Most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of resilience, justice, and courage.